Well, good afternoon to you. It's 3:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, we talk election integrity with Ken Cuccinelli, the chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative. A lot of big questions all across the country. Ken will run through them with us, including all of the latest news out of Virginia as the Commonwealth pushes to get all of this before the United States Supreme Court, getting non-citizens off the voter rolls, the Biden administration fighting to keep non-citizens there. Ken weighs in. Coming up, Julie Kelly is here at 4 o'clock. We'll chat with her about Kamala Harris's closing argument today as she once again slanders her political opponent and his supporters. Jason Miyares, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, is here at 4:30. We talked to him about the fight in front of the United States Supreme Court. And at 5 o'clock, Tucker Carlson joins the show. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A listener reminds me today, that Kamala Harris is holding this rally. It's set to take place at the Ellipse at 7 o'clock tonight. And the idea is that she wants to call attention to the events of January 6th. By which she means she's going to distort them beyond recognition. Distort them beyond recognition. Do you think peacefully and patriotically is going to come out of her mouth tonight? Do you think that's going to make an appearance? No, is the answer to that. That won't make an appearance at all. In fact, this is the party that's fighting to make elections less believable. That's the entire scheme right now. Daily Caller headline today on that. Democrats fight to make elections less trustworthy. And as they go down the list of all of the things that are happening all across the country right now, as Democrats are chipping away at your faith in our elections rather than solidifying your faith that the election is going to be legitimately conducted and concluded. They're fighting to get rid of voter ID wherever they can. They're fighting to keep non-citizens on the voter rolls wherever they can. It is illegal for a non-citizen to participate in a federal election. It is illegal. The United States Department of Justice, if they were really doing their job, would be standing shoulder to shoulder with the states who are trying to get the non-citizens out of the voter rolls. The Justice Department would be asking for a list of those names so they can go down them and establish whether or not they have criminal grounds to go after people for being on the voter rolls fraudulently. That's what a normal Department of Justice would be doing. But instead, at the behest of the Biden-Harris administration, they are once again interfering in the election on behalf of Democrats against Republicans because they are convinced that non-citizens being on the voter rolls, which is illegal, redound to their benefit. That's what's happening. It's crazy. Hans von Spakovsky telling the Daily Caller, he's, of course, an election expert, one of the leading election experts in the whole country. He said, what's so bizarre about that lawsuit, the two lawsuits that the Department of Justice has filed, that is the exact opposite of what the DOJ should be doing, he says. It's a criminal violation of federal. In fact, it's a felony for an alien to register to vote. And so what the DOJ ought to be doing is going to Virginia and saying, can you please give me the files of each of these voters so we can investigate and potentially prosecute them? And no, instead, they're saying, no, you've got to keep on the voter rolls aliens who are breaking federal law. So there's Hans von Spakovsky, an actual lawyer, saying all of that. That in a sane world, the Justice Department would be working to help Virginians believe their elections. And to not just believe their elections, but to protect the integrity of their vote. You realize every non-citizen who participates in an election, which is, again, illegal, has an effect of disenfranchising every other voter in the state by some percentage. The value of your vote goes down when non-citizens participate in the same election that you do. That's true. There are rules here. And, of course, the federal government is pushing for them to be violated in violation of the laws of the federal government. In the last hour, just minutes ago, the United States Department of Justice has issued its response filing to the United States Supreme Court. This after the Supreme Court was basically Virginia, the state of Virginia, has filed an emergency appeal to the United States Supreme Court saying these people should not be on our voter rolls at all. And in fact, we went through a very rigorous process, including checking with the people who are on the voter rolls, the non-citizens, and saying, are you sure you're a non-citizen? Are you sure? And they were getting back, as you've heard from the governor of the state, Glenn Youngkin, they were getting back affirmation that, yeah, actually, I'm a non-citizen. I shouldn't even be on the voter rolls. And so Virginia purges thousands of non-citizens from the voter rolls, having gone through a deliberative effort to establish each one. And the United States Department of Justice was given until today at 3 o'clock to file its response. And so they did just minutes ago. Haven't had a chance to go through the whole thing, but they're insistent here that, oh, no, this is a violation of federal law. This was done in a systematic way. It's too close to the election. You can't remove all of these non-citizens right now. So in case you're wondering what the response is from the state of Virginia, lucky for you, we've got Jason Miyares, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, coming up at 4:30. We're going to talk about this. How are they going to handle this? And how quickly can this all be resolved? We're hoping imminently, and that the United States Supreme Court rules on behalf of citizens and protecting their vote. That's what this is about. Non-citizens out, citizens protected. That's what it's about. So Jason Miyares coming up. We'll talk to him. But I perhaps strayed away from the point, but I mentioned that I was contacted by a listener earlier who pointed out, Kamala Harris has this 7 o'clock rally tonight. And she's going to be rallying on the Ellipse, and they're saying lots of people are going to show up. They're all so excited to see Kamala Harris. Do you know who else held a rally in Washington? You familiar with this? In 1925, the Ku Klux Klan held a huge rally. They paraded down Pennsylvania Avenue with 30,000 people dressed up in the KKK uniforms, all marching around D.C., absolutely crazy. And so here we go again. Echoes of a KKK rally today as Kamala Harris gathers. What were the numbers they were projecting? Something like 30,000? Is she going to have the same exact number as a KKK rally back in 1925? Oh, it's just awful. The similarities that come to mind just by virtue of the fact that they're doing it in the same city. They're rallying. Even that word rally suggests, doesn't it? That's dangerous. That's a very dangerous thing. These are the rules, by the way, that the left has built. Trump holds an event at a building that wasn't even the same one that the Nazis did in the 1930s. And the left says, oh, Trump's rally is exactly like the Nazi rally. It's the most diverse, loving, energetic, positive vision rally you could possibly imagine. And the left is the left last week. They were saying this is a what did they say? Oh, it was a Nazi rally. Well, Hillary said it was a neo-Nazi rally, and as my buddy Chris Plant pointed out, that's stupid because the 1930s they would have been just regular old Nazis, not neo-Nazis yet. So dumb. But that's what they've been doing. In fact, it's a sign. You understand, of course, what this is. It's a sign of their utter desperation about what's going on with the election. If you are leading in the election, the last thing you're doing is spending time telling frivolous, slanderous, awful lies like this. No, you'd be walking around with some swagger. Oh, we're going to do great things for America. You barely would talk about your opponent. You wouldn't even talk about his existence. You would just be up there saying, we're doing great. We're doing great. But instead, all we're getting from the left right now is the most ludicrous, blood-curdling panic that we've ever seen. They're freaking out, which in some ways gives me some optimism about how this election's going to go. But another makes me really sad for the state of the country and just how much worse things can get if the left continues to inspire in weak-minded people these deranged responses that we've seen, up to and including attempted assassinations on President Trump. Listen to, for instance, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace yesterday. This is the type of hysterical nonsense that's coming out of the left.
Former First Lady Michelle Obama isn't messing around anymore because with women's reproductive health care and freedoms hanging in the balance next Tuesday, the stakes literally are life and death for every woman in America. It's not hyperbole. It's not an exaggeration.
Literally life and death for every woman in America. Every single one. Every single one. Women are going to be rounded up if Trump becomes president of the United States. And they will lose their lives. This is what... It wasn't that long ago that even MSNBC would have said, that's too much. We've given her a vacation. She's not allowed on the air anymore. In fact, we've parted ways with Nicole Wallace. She's no longer going to be here. It wouldn't have been that long ago that they would have done that. Not now. No, now it's no holds barred. All bets are off by any means necessary.
Next Tuesday, the stakes literally are life and death for every woman in America.
Just lying.
It's not hyperbole. It's not an exaggeration.
It's hyperbole. It's exaggeration.
It's what happens next week.
It's not what happens next week.
In her very first appearance on the campaign trail since her speech at the Democratic National Convention, Michelle Obama in Kalamazoo, Michigan, made a very specific and artful and powerful plea to men.
She's not specific, artful, or powerful.
Especially men who do not feel like the assault on women's reproductive rights affects them at all.
Yeah, this is the left for you. You see the left is running an ad right now claiming that women who are married, if their husband is voting for Trump, it's very likely that they're abusive. The husband is abusive, you see, if he's a Trump supporter. And they're telling women it's okay to keep secrets from your husband. This is the left, which, by the way, is like, they do this with every element of your family, don't they? They tell the kids to keep secrets from their parents. They tell the wives to keep secrets from their husbands. And if it's politically useful, they tell the husbands to keep secrets from their family too, right? Sowing division inside of the most important government unit you can possibly imagine. It's the family, the nuclear family. That's where it all starts. And the left is trying to sow division into it. They're running an advertisement right now saying that, and it depicts a woman in an American flag hat going to the polls with her, obviously, Trump-supporting husband, and he's lording over her as she votes. He's looking at her, and she's wearing an American flag hat, because that's the costume. She's wearing the Republican costume, which is the American flag, and she goes there and she trades glances with another woman who's standing at her own voting booth, and the two of them nod in agreement, and their pens move from Trump to Kamala, and their husbands are none the wiser. They were able to deceive their husbands for Kamala. Listen to this.
Your turn, honey.
In the one place in America where women still have a right to choose, you can vote any way you want. And no one will ever know.
Did you make the right choice?
Sure did, honey.
Remember, what happens in the booth stays in the booth. Vote Harris Walls. Vote Common Good is responsible for the contents of this ad.
That is a disgraceful advertisement. That is a completely disgraceful advertisement. Now, what does it tell you about the left? What does it tell you about their view of married women? They have a very low regard for married women. That patronizing garbage. And what does it tell you about their view of married men, especially married men who would dare vote for Trump? Oh, they're abusive. They're torturing their wives into compliance, is the way that's framed up. And this is not a new thing. Remember, Hillary Clinton said the same thing. When Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, one of the 600 things that she blamed, other than her failure to go to Wisconsin, was that married women were too obedient to their husbands. No, you need a happy marriage like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. That's what you need. Your marriage should look more like theirs. This is so crazy. And so that's what they think of women. In case you're wondering who the pro-woman campaign is, it's probably not the group that thinks that women are obedient little cowards in the face of abuse. That's the way Kamala Harris treats married women. It's probably not that campaign. All right, let me go to the phones. I've got Michaela calling in from Silver Spring on line 2. Hello, Michaela. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Hi, dear Vince. How you doing? Thank you for taking my call.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
This is a very emotional time, and it's spiritual warfare that's going on with our country. And what I wanted to share is that whenever I hear the word Democrat, I'm like, Lord, there's nobody calling them by their appropriate names, which is Democrats. They're going back to their roots, back in the Civil War, when they were against, rights. They were all for slavery and slavering people,
Mm-hmm.
and blue. And yeah, and it's just so frustrating, and I can't wait till it's over.
Yeah.
I believe there's going to be a lot of secret voters, Trump voters, because hopefully America, or just people, is just waking up and seeing it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, just like the demons that rebelled against God, the Democrats are everything contrary to principles and values of Bible and what God instituted. When we have babies, when babies come out of the nursery and go home with their mamas,
Yeah.
a baby girl,
Yeah.
they're expected to grow up to be young ladies to get with men and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? God also instituted family, which the Democrats are trying to break up, the whole concept of family.
Yeah.
And, everything they are, what they do, what they say, the candidates lying, cheating, stealing, deceiving, it's all, it's all pretty typical of what demons do.
Yeah, it's not healthy. You've detected the spiritual component to all of this, Michaela.
It's definitely spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
And if anybody who knows the Bible, the good Lord already told us that we're in the end times. He told us before we knew. And the Bible is just an open book before us. Right
Yeah.
now.
No, but we've in the midst of all of it, we've got to soldier on. So, one, say your prayers, and two, save your country. It's within your power to do that. Coming up, Ken Cuccinelli will be with us. We're talking election integrity with him. We've got a whole list of things to get to, and we'll do it in a moment. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 3:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Julie Kelly joins us with a preview of Kamala Harris's big address at 7 o'clock tonight on the Ellipse. She decided the waning days of the election are going to be about January 6, 2021, rather than January 6, 2025, when a new president is counted up. It's crazy. Also, somebody made the observation, guess who's not going to be at that tonight? Joe Biden. Biden, who lives in D.C., it turns out. I just checked. He lives in Washington. He will not be at the rally. Why won't he be at the rally? Why keep him away? Jason Miara is the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Is here at 4:30. He'll react to all of the hoopla around whether or not the Supreme Court is going to allow non-citizens to be forced onto Virginia's voter rolls this year. And Tucker Carlson's here at 5 o'clock. Can't wait to talk to him. And you can chat with us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yes, indeed. The United States Supreme Court has before it an emergency appeal from the Commonwealth of Virginia saying, hey, we're trying to get all these non-citizens off the voter rolls, and the Biden administration, for some insane reason, wants us to keep non-citizens on the voter rolls. The Biden administration's Justice Department just filed its legal brief to the Supreme Court. For more on everything that's going on with election integrity, we bring in Ken Cuccinelli now. He's the national chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative. Sir, good to have you back with us.
Always good to be with you. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Ken, but why is the Biden Justice Department fighting like hell to help foreigners stay on Virginia's voter rolls?
Yeah, of all the things they could spend their time and effort on, isn't that interesting? I mean, this is how they defend American democracy, by keeping non-citizens on the voter rolls as best they can. The only reason I can think of is that they think they'll do better with non-citizens voting than without them voting. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably correct, but it's illegal. And here you have the Department of Injustice fighting to make sure the law is not enforced properly, when Virginia's been doing this. And by the way, the bill was my bill, signed by Governor Tim Kaine, you know, that raving right-winger, enforced in the same way by Terry McAuliffe in October of 2016, by Ralph Northam in October of 2020, and the results of it announced by Governor Youngkin August 7th, 90 days before Election Day. And 2 months and a week later, the Department of Justice files suit. If that isn't screamingly political, I don't know what is. This is a pure narrative lawsuit, nothing more. But I think the Supreme Court may take it quickly and reverse the injunction and force them to go after the election to resolve the full case. And I think Attorney General Miyares is going to win that case.
So in other words, the court could come out and say, actually, no, these non-citizens are not allowed on the voter rolls, not for now.
The court did, the lower court and the Fourth Circuit said, sorry, you said not allowed. Yes, that would be correct. That's the goal that they're seeking. The lower court, confirmed by the Fourth Circuit, which is arguably the most partisan left-wing circuit in the country now, ordered to keep these non-citizens on the voter rolls, which is just incredible. It's almost as incredible as the Department of Justice asking for it.
So you mentioned something. I mean, I want to get into like the legal nitty-gritty for just a moment. The Justice Department's claim is that Virginia violated something called the quiet period provision, that you can't do this within 90 days of an election. But as you pointed out, you just said the key thing. Youngkin's executive order on this subject to say, hey, non-citizens off the voter rolls, that came 90 days before the election. In other words, outside of the window. And additionally, it's not, as the governor's been describing it, it wasn't a systematic removal. It was an individualized, deliberative removal of these non-citizens.
Yes, and for your listeners, the quiet period, meaning you need to stop removals. There are exceptions to it, of course. But you can't do systematic voter removal. You can't have processes that automatically take people off. And as you noted, Vince, these are situations brought up by one individual, the individual involved, who tells the DMV, no, I'm not a citizen. So DMV flags that information. It goes over to elect the state election board, which in turn sends it to if it's your county, your local registrar, and they communicate with you. They send you a postcard at your voting address, and if you say, no, that's a mistake, I'm really a citizen, they keep you on the rolls. But I would also note, in terms of the potential for harm, look, there are always mistakes that are made, but in Virginia now, you can register when you go in to vote. So what's the harm here of actually enforcing this law properly?
No, there would be no harm. That's such a good point about that. Okay, so let me move to some other voter integrity issues, because we do have Attorney General Miyares coming up at 4:30. I'll dive in more with him. But I'm looking at some things like, so for instance, Nevada, big headline in the last 24 hours is that the Supreme Court of Nevada, which is a swing state, is saying that now that they will accept ballots up to 3 days after the election, and those ballots have to be counted regardless of whether they have a postmark. How can the mail even handle a ballot and not have a postmark on
it? So the post office, believe it or not, has been getting worse and worse. You remember how the left went crazy in 2020? Donald Trump's post office is trying to undermine mail-in voting. I got news for you. Post office performance in 2020, according to the Inspector General of the Post Office, looks like the U.S. Postal Olympic team compared to their performance in 2024. It has gotten so bad that I know many and senior directors of elections who aren't Republicans who are advising people to avoid the mail altogether because your ballot may never show up at the clerk's office. So now let's take the heat off the Nevada Supreme Court. The Nevada legislature has a law that says if you can't read the postmark, or if there is no postmark, then ballots received up to 5 p.m. on Friday after the election day are presumed to have been mailed on time. So all the Supreme Court was doing there was applying the law, the lousy law, by the way, that the Nevada legislature had in place. This is one example of why Nevada has some of the worst election laws in the country.
Mm-hmm. But this is a state in which Trump is performing well. And
he is
expected to pick up a victory. But the reason this lawsuit ends up in front of the Nevada Supreme Court was at the urging of the Democrat Secretary of State of Nevada. So Democrats clearly of the opinion that late ballots and ballots without postmarks are the kinds of things that are going to help them.
They have always held that view. I don't know, because of the shifting strategy on the GOP side, I'm not sure how true all those assumptions will be this year. Nonetheless, the history is that has been more helpful to them, and so they push the envelope, pun intended, on what can be accepted and when, regardless of what the law says or the rules are.
All right, let's talk about Pennsylvania too. Pennsylvania, of course, is perhaps the most critical state in the country on election night, or at least that's what most people think is going to be the case. Republicans have been asking the United States Supreme Court to block some of the provisional ballots in Pennsylvania for people who have errors with their mail-in ballot. In other words, if their mail-in ballot is rejected, they shouldn't be able to file a provisional vote as well. What do we make of this?
Yeah, so this is an attempt to avoid having people have two ballots in the system. And yes, they screwed up the first time, and they can, they need to take the steps under state law to cure that ballot rather than voting another one. That's what the fight is over. And it's really kind of that simple. They don't want two ballots out there. It makes perfectly good sense because, of course, you and I both know that the next thing the Dems will do is argue to count both of them. Mm-hmm. It isn't like they're going to pull a particular ballot out of the ballot box and say, okay, we'll accept this one instead. Plus, within the Pennsylvania system, that's an awfully hard thing to track. So when you put in another ballot, the provisional ballot in this case, that doesn't take the absentee ballot out of the curing process by itself. So you can end up with two ballots in the system. That's why they're fighting for this. Pennsylvania's got a lot of messes going on. And part of the reason, as you note, Vince, that people are looking at it as the most important swing state is because it also has the most electoral votes.
Yeah.
So there's more at stake in this one state, and it's messy. It's messy.
Yeah, it sure is. And even the projections right now is we still won't know who the victor in Pennsylvania is on election night. It's unlikely, correct?
I think that's quite correct. Yeah.
Okay.
If I had to guess, it'll be several days in Pennsylvania.
It's just awful.
Whereas in Georgia, for example, I think when you wake up Wednesday morning, you'll probably know.
Yeah, which is why, of course, I'm hoping that President Trump is able to establish a path to victory that doesn't even require Pennsylvania, because then we could get an answer really quickly. All right, let me ask you about some other shenanigans going on in the country. In the Northwest, there have been a number of ballot drop boxes that have been set on fire earlier this week. But I don't know whose ballots they're burning. I presume they're even burning Democrat ballots in these boxes because it's Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, Washington. And local officials say that in Portland, it was just 3 ballots that were damaged inside of a drop box, whereas hundreds were affected in Vancouver, Washington. The local news reported that in Portland, they apparently have fire suppressant built into the ballot boxes. So I guess they're accustomed to Antifa attempting to burn all of the ballots.
Yeah, they burn everything, right? Why not ballot boxes? This is an argument for not using ballot boxes. I'm Captain Obvious here. But the other problems here are, whose ballots are they? You have no real way of knowing that.
Right.
So whose do you replace? Who do you let vote again? And as somebody who won an election by 101 votes, the quantity burned in Vancouver is bigger than the margin of victory in.
Sure.
So that is a big deal. We've had 60 races, won that were tied or won by 1 vote in this country over the years, and so this is a serious problem. It points to using drop boxes. We should be voting in person or delivering these right into a live human being who can register that you brought in your ballot into an election office.
Yeah. I mean, well, control of the Virginia legislature was decided by coin toss just a few years ago when the votes were dead even. So that's just crazy. Okay. Hey, let me, before we let you go here, Ken Cuccinelli, being such an expert on Virginia politics, what do you make of the fact that President Trump is coming to Virginia to rally on Saturday? It's the final weekend before the election. He must be seeing some indicator that he thinks Virginia is in play. That's why he's here. Or he's trying to get Kamala to spread herself thin and exert resources in Virginia. What do you think's going on?
Well, I think the first is more likely. I think he believes that there's at least a plausible scenario where he could win Virginia. I think that's correct. I don't know that any of us would sort of bet our life savings on that, but Virginia is not out of reach, as Governor Youngkin, Lieutenant Governor Sears, and Attorney General Miyares have shown us. I would also note we have a couple of congressional districts that are among the hottest races in the country in the 7th and the 10th. So the better Trump does, the better those candidates' shots are. And of course, Hung Kao's running statewide for the Senate. So he's trying to help down ballot in addition to trying to win. And the trend lines are in his favor. I'm not a natural optimist, but that's why I think he's trying to spread the map a bit. It's to get himself more of a congressional majority, and to take a shot at some of these states that he may have a low probability of winning, but he has some, like Virginia, New Mexico, et cetera.
Yeah, that's smart. In fact, those districts could decide control of the entire House of Representatives, so that would be
correct.
A good reason.
Yes, and there's one of the congressional districts in New Mexico is another one of the hottest contested races in the country.
Yeah, it sure is. And then that you think the early vote in Virginia is positive enough that you have some degree of optimism that you don't usually have?
Yes, what I don't know is, because this is really the first election where Republicans have really gone hard after early voting. I've already voted. I hope the people listening to you and me have already voted.
Yeah.
But we won't know until after Election Day how much of that's getting cannibalized from Election Day. But it's better to have it in the bank, because the candidates who might have spent money on you up to the point you early vote, they can see you voted. They can't tell who you voted for. But then they start spending that money on people who are less likely to vote, but who they think, if they voted, would also vote, for example, for President Trump, for Hung Kao, for Derek Anderson, et cetera.
Yeah, well, I'm with you. I hope everybody who's listening right now gets out early votes. If you've done it already, thank you for that. My wife did it today. She sent me a picture as proof. Which is good, because I didn't want to have to lord over her and threaten her to vote for Trump as the left, says I would. It's like she sent me the bumper sticker, the Trump bumper sticker, and the I voted sticker. So good news.
Well,
one more for Trump.
I would add, for those of us who really can't stand massive amounts of early voting, and I get a few days of it, et cetera, but 45 days in Virginia is ludicrous, and we're killing our election officials. You want to get rid of early voting? Beat them at early voting. They will join you in getting rid of early voting. Suddenly, early voting will be racist.
Of course.
And all we need to do to make it racist is to win it. And then you'll have Democrat legislators stumbling over themselves to get rid of it.
Well, this is the other piece, and I know we're going over time, but the other piece is, like, now among Americans who are not registered to vote, they're disproportionately likely to support Trump and Republicans. So voter registration drives among Democrats are done. There's no chance that they want more people to register to vote. So even that is racist, too.
Too funny. Too funny. Good stuff. Always good to be with you.
Always good to talk to you. Ken Cuccinelli, really appreciate his insights. All right. Line 4 is where we find Mary in Lorton. Mary, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
There.
Hey there, Mary.
So, hey, one of the reasons I was calling is that there seems to be a lot of focus on the analysis of the illegal votes being that the Democrats are fighting for illegal votes to benefit the Democrats.
Yeah.
But they're not talking about if you kind of look at it from a different angle, how could it undermine a Trump win? And you've already got Jamie Raskin out there making noise that they're not going to let him take office.
Right.
And, if that comes down to it, then you're talking about a contingent election. And, if there is a contingent election, one of the things that concerns me, and a question I have, and hopefully my analyst will answer, is if somebody challenges the presidential result, they sever that from any sort of down ballot, because a lot of people are saying Democrats are focused on down ballot. And Kamala, you're right, she's not a serious candidate. And if she's a throwaway candidate, can they challenge Trump and not the down ballot? And then you've got a Democrat Congress and they throw out Trump.
So, in other words, don't limit our analysis of the kind of shenanigans Democrats are up to. It's a full range of possible awful scenarios. This is why we need Republicans just to win in a really big, clear way so we don't have to deal with any of this crap. Don't you think? Julie Kelly joins us next. We'll talk about what's happening right here in Washington, D.C. tonight. Kamala Harris set to reprise an awful scene from 1925. Just awful, awful, awful.